Joining us now, the Democratic nominee in the New York City mayoral race, Zohran Mamdani.
We were talking about important things, Mika.
No,
I found out. Lemire gave me this information.
Lemire is.
I found out he is a commie after all.
Yeah.
He's an Arsenal fan.
I know. That was tough.
Seriously,
I'm guilty on the Arsenal.
And Metsy-ish.
Yeah.
The Mets are cool.
Mets are fine.
That's what we like.
As long as it's not the Yankees.
No, then it's worse than a commie, right? So anyway, thank you for being with us. We've got a lot of questions to ask you. I just want to ask them generally. Always ask this question of people that are out campaigning. It's old politician in me, you know. I always found you knock on doors. It takes you about 3 doors to figure out what people are talking about. What are you hearing people talking about more than anything else? When you see them, even people that aren't supporting you, what are they concerned about?
Cost of living, cost of living, cost of living. I've been hearing this since we launched the campaign last October, which is the fact that New York City has become the most expensive city in the United States of America. And I'm hearing from New Yorkers that they can't afford their rent, they can't afford their child care, their groceries, even $2.90 to ride the bus.
What do they think you can do about it?
Well, what they see is the fact that the mayor has the power to determine whether rents will rise for more than 2 million New Yorkers who live in rent-stabilized apartments. This mayor increased the rent on those New Yorkers by more than 12%. I've said I would freeze it for 4 years. They also know that childcare after housing is the highest cost for a family in this city. And the previous administration, Bill de Blasio, delivered universal pre-K. This admin has just sat and watched as it's pricing people out. We are going to actually deliver universal childcare.
And how much childcare through what age?
6 weeks to 5 years.
Okay, and how much do you estimate that'll cost?
We've seen estimates of around $6 billion or so.
$6 billion. Okay, and so here's the question. I'm a small C conservative, a small government conservative. I believe billionaires should pay their fair share. I also understand.
I would reach across and shake your hand, but it's a big table.
It's a big table, but I also understand there's a delicate balance there. You can't tax billionaires here so much, and you can't tax companies here so much that they decide they're going to go to Connecticut or Texas or Florida. So how do you, while people are shouting and screaming that you're a socialist, how do you balance those two competing interests? You got to keep the businesses here. At the same time, you got to fund these programs.
You know, I think one of the first ways is that you think about your fiscal policy and how it'll actually impact these kinds of corporations. So the proposal we've put forward is to raise the state's top corporate tax rate to match that of New Jersey. And now what you're bringing up is, what if that company leaves? Now, what we see is with corporate taxes here in New York State, they apply to any business that's doing business here. You could be headquartered in Orlando.
Right.
As long as you're doing business here, you're subject to that tax. And companies are going to keep doing business here because of the fact that
What
it's
about
one of the largest economies.
What about the individual taxpayer?
So what we're talking about is raising taxes on the top 1% of New Yorkers. They make $1 million or more a year by 2%. And what we've seen is that actually the top 1%, they leave at 1/4 the rate of other tax brackets in New York City. And one of the actual determining factors is quality of life. And this is at the heart of our vision for government, is to deliver the best quality of life in this country. That every New Yorker knows that for any dollar they're taxed, it's getting an ROI that they have not yet seen in this city. One that is going to transform what it means to be safe, what it means to live in a city that's clean, and also what it means to live in a city that takes care of your basic needs.
So here's what I found about New Yorkers, and even liberal New Yorkers. I found this through the years. They like to talk about how liberal and how progressive they are, but if quality of life issues start slipping, they suddenly become very Republican, and they become very conservative. So I think this is something Bill de Blasio, a progressive, even understood. Crime fell to the lowest number. It's been, New York Times said, my God, we have to go back to the 1950s to even guess when it's been this safe in New York City. A lot of people are afraid if they elect you, you're going to take your eye off the ball on making New York a safer place. You're going to be hostile towards the police. You're going to change the police commissioner. What do you tell those people who are concerned about safety, quality of life issues, homelessness, people that don't think, liberals, don't think it's progressive for somebody who's mentally ill to be sleeping on a grate when it's 4 degrees below zero?
Let's be clear, it's not progressive for that. And quality of life actually has to be at the heart of any progressive politics. And public safety will be the cornerstone for delivering our affordability agenda. And this, what we've seen right now, is...
So you're saying you're putting public safety
It is
as job number one.
It is a critical
Keeping
focus.
New Yorkers safe.
Absolutely.
Making sure that when kids walk to school, they can walk there safely. When they're in school,
Absolutely.
You like cops.
Look, yes,
you like police officers.
Our police officers are going to be the ones we partner with to deliver public safety. And I just want to say a few things, which is that when you ask New Yorkers, where do they feel least safe? They'll often tell you when they're using public transit. They'll say, when I'm on the subway, when I'm in the train, I'll see a homelessness crisis, a mental health crisis, and we've asked cops to be responsible for these crises, whereas their jobs should really be focusing on serious crimes. And so our vision is allow officers to focus on shootings and murders and the serious crimes that we know New Yorkers are concerned about, and have a Department of Community Safety that deals with the mental health crisis, that deals with homelessness, that actually deploys dedicated teams of mental health outreach workers to the 100 subway stations with the highest rates of these incidents to take those New Yorkers out of the system of the subway and connect them with the services that they need. That's how we're going to deliver.
And if they stay in that subway, if it's the same person day in, day out in that subway, you will give them the authority to make sure they're taken out of the subway.
Yes, this is the focus of the Department of Community Safety, is to connect them with services. And if, after we exhaust each and every issue, involuntary confinement is there, but it should be a last resort of what we do.
So a defining theme for the next mayor will be the relationship with the White House and President Trump. And Trump and White House officials seem to be salivating at the idea of you winning. We've heard from the president saying, we can't have a socialist.
So you've got that in common with President Trump.
There you go. So what would there's threats to cut funding. There are threats to send in the National Guard, a la what we've seen in Chicago. If the White House tries to do those things and you're mayor, what's the response?
What we're already seeing is a White House that is engaging in the political persecution of its perceived enemies, right? We're seeing that whether we're talking about Attorney General Tish James, whether we're talking about others across this country. And what is so enraging for so many in this city is that Donald Trump ran on 3 promises. He ran on the punishment of his political enemies, he ran on easing the cost of living crisis, and he ran on engaging in a program of mass deportation. It's that second promise of the cost of living crisis that brought so many to his campaign, and yet he's unable and unwilling to deliver on that because he's beholden to the very billionaires that are profiting off of that crisis. So what he's doing is focusing entirely on this agenda of punishment and cruelty. And what I would do is to actually stand up for New Yorkers. And what I mean by that is you can see in this race right now, the other candidate that is running for mayor is Andrew Cuomo. He released a statement yesterday speaking about this indictment of Attorney General James. He couldn't even name her. He couldn't even name Donald Trump. And he couldn't do those things because he knows that his narrow path to City Hall is paved by the very billionaires who put Donald Trump back in the White House. And Donald Trump's getting a good return on his investment right now because he's seeing a mayoral candidate, a former governor, unwilling to lift a finger when we see this unprecedented attack, not just on our democracy, but on an attorney general whose only crime is standing up for the people of New York.
So the mayor of Chicago and the governor there have said they would not be supportive of sending the National Guard to help ICE agents with their actions in their city. And that what they got was the President Trump calling for their jailing. If he calls for the same thing here, using the Guard for ICE agents, what would you do from City Hall?
Yeah.
I would, first of all, agree with Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, who has made clear that there's no need to deploy the National Guard here in New York City, not for safety, not for security. We trust the NYPD to be in charge of delivering that very thing. And I don't even have to think about the hypothetical of what Donald Trump will call for me, because he's already called for me to be deported. He's already called for me to be denaturalized. He's already called for me to be arrested. And these are the kinds of threats that we know we will have to walk through to defend the people of this city, and I'm prepared to do that.
Would you keep Commissioner Tisch?
I've said that I'm actively considering it, and the reason that I am is that I appreciate her swift and decisive action of uprooting corruption from the upper echelons of the PD and also presiding over a historic drop in crime across the city.
I'm curious. So are you 33?
But I'm about to be 34.
About to be 34.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm only going to be
every day I get
4 years
older.
older than you. Okay, so I'm curious who you'd surround yourself with, and also past 5 or 10 governors, mayors of this city. Whose administration, whose leadership would you model yourself most after? Or just who do you think was one of the better mayors of the past 5 to 10?
So to your first question, I would surround myself with the best and the brightest. And that means hiring people on the basis of excellence, of merit, of actual track record of results.
And by the way, people who tell you no,
Yes. Because
are you good with people who tell you
Team
no?
of rivals?
Absolutely. You cannot have a team that is characterized by the quickness with which they say yes to an idea. You have to have a team that ensures that when you're privately discussing an idea, you're picking at the strengths and the weaknesses, not one that is just trying to usher it into public. And so that's been a focus of how we're thinking about who we're going to appoint, who we're going to hire, people that can deliver, not the basis of identity or ideology, but results and their track record. And when I look at the mayors of the last few administrations, I find pieces of inspiration, frankly, across all of them.
How they ran government.
Yes, you know, I will say, when we look at even someone like Rudy Giuliani, right, who I have many critiques of, I admire the fact that he made public transit free with the Staten Island Ferry. When we look at Mayor Bloomberg, he presided over 850 acres of new green space. He presided over a transformation of the streetscape of the city and a focus on delivery of service that has sometimes been lacking. Bill de Blasio delivered universal pre-K, which is something that took an immense amount of strain off of the backs of so many working class families, and even Mayor Adams, for whom I have no shortage of critiques. His proposal to bring forth City of Yes, which will increase housing production across the city, that's something that deserves to be built on.
So we have people that come on the show that are very concerned about you as far as your relationship with Jewish voters in New York City, believe that there's like this simmering anti-Semitism. I know months ago you were asked about 1,000 different ways and times, something about globalizing the intifada. Do you condemn that statement? What do you say to those who believe that you're going to be, if you're mayor, you will, if not be openly hostile to Jews in New York City, at least you will not be as sensitive to their concerns about that? And you see this. I mean, you go around New York City, and if they're kids at a Jewish school, there have to be armed guards outside all the time. There's constant threats. What do you say to them that say, we can't have him in there, he's anti-Semitic?
You know, first of all, to be clear, not only am I not anti-Semitic, but there's no place for anti-Semitism in this city, this state, this country, or this world. And just yesterday, I was with a number of rabbis in Williamsburg. We were celebrating Sukkot. And as I was there, one of the rabbis who was sitting alongside me was the same man who had told me months ago of how for decades he had left his door open in New York City. And in these last few years, he started to lock it out of a fear of rising anti-Semitism. And my job is not only to protect Jewish New Yorkers across the city, but it's also to cherish those same New Yorkers. So it doesn't just mean increasing funding for anti-hate crime prevention programming by 800%. It doesn't just mean sustaining and increasing police presence outside of synagogues on high holy days so that Jewish New Yorkers can worship without fear. It also means ensuring that we're embracing a curriculum. We have a curriculum here in New York City called Hidden Voices that celebrates the breadth and the beauty of Jewish life. It has to be implemented across our entire system. And what I've found is that too often we're allowing these moments of support, these moments of protection to be based on who you know. A rabbi calls me on Yom Kippur, says, can you send more police to the synagogue? I make the call. That rabbi shouldn't have to make that call to me. It should be something that he knows is there.
Let me ask you also, in this age of growing anti-Muslim rhetoric, same question for Muslims in this city. What do you do to protect them again and the quote others against growing stem of hate crimes?
I think the first thing is a recognition that this is a city for all of us. This is a city where all of us belong. I would be the first Muslim mayor in New York City's history, and it would be an illustration of the fact that anyone, no matter where they're from, no matter their faith, no matter which borough, that they too could lead this city. And what I've heard from Muslim New Yorkers is a fear about what it means to be Muslim in public, and I can relate to that because I've faced that myself over the course of this campaign, where there was a man from Texas that was recently arraigned in Queens for making death threats on myself and my family. He said he wanted an IDF bullet to go through my skull. There have been threats of the kind that I now have to walk around with a security detail. But none of it will dissuade me from moving through the city that I love, because that's what it means to stand up to the kind of rhetoric and the politics we've seen across this country. It's believing in people across the city.
Democratic nominee in the New York City mayoral race, Zohran Mamdani. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
See you soon.
And by the way, Mika, for those who say he's too young, he's going to turn 34 soon.
Come on.
We got 8 days.
Exactly.
I made sure to do it before the election.
There you go. Okay, we'll buy you a walker.
Okay, still ahead.